the proliferation of pseudo-knowledge and misinformation being spread so abundantly on and offline is actually one of the main signifiers of faulty research methodologies in just about any field, from the physical sciences to religion to pretty much everything in between. This is the problem of what I like to call falling in love with a hypothesis. When you fall in love with your hypothesis, when this happens, and I'm fairly certain it happens to just about all of us, the deeply held yet unproven belief we have in a causal relationship between two or more things, once internalized, effectively psychologically prevents us from considering any factors that could possibly cast doubt on that hypothesis. And I only call it a hypothesis out of courtesy, because really it becomes a belief. We test hypotheses. We can use falsification. Falling in love with a hypothesis is much like falling in love with another person. Flaws that might be objectively apparent to a dispassionate observer. Red flags that may be indicative of a less than complete understanding of the nature of who or what we're dealing with are sort of shrugged off or ignored in order to preserve, for whatever reason, a fundamental belief. And that belief is that our supposed understanding of who or what we're dealing with is true. The point is, if you're ignoring any part of the evidence regarding whatever it is you claim to be researching, or discounting the importance of anything that casts doubt on your theory, you're essentially feeding into your own confirmation bias. And in doing so, you also open up the door to be more receptive to bad evidence or flimsy evidence. And while it may feel great to sort of think you are right, if you choose to ignore only that information that is showing you that you're maybe not right, you're essentially becoming only more and more adept at basically bullshitting yourself into believing you know something without actually doing the work. This is a trap that a lot of us walk into because it's just really, really easy to do, and we want to believe whatever it is. And let's face a hard fact, there's a ton of non-factual information out there. It's a simple thing, really. The cost of generating bullshit, fake knowledge, nonsense, the cost of generating that is exponentially lower than the cost of even the slightest amount of effective actual research. For all the billions of hours we dedicate as a species to increasing our knowledge of ourselves and everything around us to the highest levels of accuracy that we can attain, and even then, trying to push it further every day, it seems like it's sometimes all washed away by a 5-minute YouTube video of some schmuck staring into his phone and either regurgitating some already disproven bullshit with zero confirming evidence, and maybe an hour reading bits of Wikipedia entries or maybe the first page of a Google search. On the other hand, the poster of that video may think that they're really providing the viewers with some great information. On the other hand, they may just be selling others some bullshit that they need validation for. Perhaps they figured out that all of their failures and problems in life, maybe it's just the fault of the Jews, or aliens, or women, or black people. They seem to have a psychological need to validate this belief by confirming that others also have that belief, and also by spreading that belief. As if, the more people think something is true, then it must be true, right? That's, that's nonsense to anyone well versed in critical thinking, but I can see how the appeal exists. All of a sudden, the burden of having to deal with the world, life, physical reality is alleviated by simply saying and believing I have the answer. And of course, the more things explainable by the fewest or even ideally a single solution or answer, the more neat we imagine our reality to be. Our reality becomes very clearly defined, and yes, it's the aliens, it's the Jews, it's women, it's Hispanic people. That's the reason why everything is the way it is, and my personal responsibility is not there, and all the factors that come into play mean nothing in comparison to this one or two factors that I've somehow imagined to be the sole responsible factor in my problems or your problems or all the problems of the world. Um, we imagine that reality to be that way. So we don't have to spend hours checking and cross-checking data. We don't have to read long, boring academic research or follow any experimental protocols. We don't have to try and falsify our claims or verify any evidence that may or may not be substantial. Those things may take years. So, yeah, it would seem to be much easier to find a nice, neat theory that you wish were true and just believe it, right? Pretty much any irrational belief you would like to reinforce can be. Just, hop onto your nearest online echo chamber and allow yourself to be passively rewarded by all the confirmation you need. Just don't do any searches for the opposite. You'll probably find just as much evidence denying your chosen theory's validity. While I find this to be personally a little sad and overall a heavy contributor to the decline of critical thinking across our society, I can accept that a lot of us are just sort of okay with not really knowing stuff. If you want to walk around and think the earth is flat or that your natal chart is somehow important, you go right ahead and do it. That's fine. You guys should totally form your own society. If you don't think vaccinations for measles, polio, etc., or water treatment is the way to go, you should totally form your own society and go live there instead of using the rest of us as a shield from the well-documented ill effects of living in a society without those things. If you think that all our decisions should be left to stars and blood moons and natal charts, fine. You can even base your entire society on that. You can elect your leaders based on zodiac signs. Teachers, doctors, soldiers can all be determined based on signs. Right? Marriages, what type of business you're allowed to run, whether you can have kids or not, all in your natal chart. Just go by that. Run a society based on that. I'm sure this is also accurate a predictive methodology that you couldn't possibly go wrong, right? A wonderful, brave new world. A world in which wanting to be right and the desire to have your theory be right are more important than any evidence that you are not. This is the world of those who absolutely adore their chosen hypothesis. This is the world where we create bullshit media for the sole purpose of spreading bullshit that simply exists to psychologically reward us for believing in bullshit. Why? Because it's easy. It may even be easier to convince others of our bullshit than to admit that we don't know. I'm sure it feels better at a certain point. But let's ask ourselves a question. How much of the information that you receive in a YouTube video, for instance, do you accept as factual with zero confirming evidence of that information, with zero validation of that information? Now, obviously, validating a YouTube video from YouTube and information available on YouTube is a very incomplete assessment of that information. This is why we have a scientific method, and this is why it can be applied to so many different fields of inquiry, because it's not simply about science, it's about information retrieval, verification, discovery, and collaboration. That's one of the main features of this methodology. You can collaborate with others who have a vested interest in actually finding out what's actually going on. However, many times, especially online, the only collaboration going on is a bunch of people who have a similar belief joining forces to reinforce that belief in one another, and not to really discover anything, not to really bring different sets of data together to corroborate all that they've observed. They're simply regurgitating whatever line of bullshit they bought into long ago and reconfirming that and citing each other as sources of evidence. Another famous source of evidence is Wikipedia articles. I can't tell you how many YouTube videos I've watched that have used as their sole source of information a bunch of Google tabs and a few Wikipedia entries. That is not legitimate, verifiable information. Wikipedia itself goes so far as to outright deny that it is a source of verifiable evidence for anything. It is not, it goes out of its way. Wikipedia goes out of its way to explain right there on the page that it is not a valid research source. However, that doesn't stop a lot of people from using it as a research source, knowing that the source itself has told you that it's unreliable. But that's fine, because you're following your confirmation bias, and if you come across something on there that confirms what you believe, yes, it's true, that's great. Confirmation, evidence, proof. But if you come across another page which says the opposite, oh, that was planted there by agents of whoever, and it's all part of the plot to suppress the information. Well, I've actually seen videos of people citing Wikipedia articles where they show the article on the screen and they say it says one thing and it says the opposite of that thing. This is what happens when you fall victim to your confirmation bias and your own bullshit. This is how you can test this. If you're talking to someone and they make a claim, especially a large claim, which basically portends to overturn all the data you've seen on this thing, whatever it is, if you show them legitimate evidence to the contrary, and they say that that also proves their point, as well as evidence that you show them that might verify their point. Any evidence presented to them will verify their point. Why? Because they have a confirmation bias addiction, and they cannot differentiate between information that confirms their hypothesis and information that rejects it. In science, if you have a hypothesis and you find information that rejects that hypothesis, You're not married to the hypothesis, you change your hypothesis. You change your, not belief, but you change your interpretation of things based on the data that you receive. If I'm thinking that all ducks are, all baby ducks are yellow, and I come across a baby duck that's black, there's only two possibilities. Either that baby duck isn't a duck at all, or all baby ducks aren't yellow. That's it. So I can change my hypothesis, and if it changes far enough, my theory gets overturned, and I adopt a new theory. That's how that works. However, you have a lot of people posting videos, writing things that are so in love with their theory and enamored with the idea that this is a realistic explanation for things around them, that the theory becomes more important than the actual reality. Now, I would caution everyone against simply listening to or following or sort of soaking up too much of a single source of information, especially about things that you really want to know. And the other thing is, I would ask myself the question, do I really want to know, even if it's not true? Do I love my theory more than I love the actual truth? Am I so passionate about this theory, and am I so happy to have heard that theory that it seems to magically explain everything around me, that that's going to blind me to information concerning it? One of the things that I found is that it takes a lot more effort to disprove someone else's bullshit than it does to generate that bullshit. I can sit here and generate bullshit all day. For instance, I happened across a video where some dude held his phone up to his face and filmed himself saying over and over again that the moon emits electromagnetic frequencies and that somehow triggers a response in human beings. It took me 2 days of research to debunk that claim that person made in the space of a few seconds. It took him a few seconds to send that information out to millions of people all across the world. And from me, one single person, to find out whether or not that statement was true or false, I had to do a lot of research. I had to go on ResearchGate, I had to go on Quora, I had to look at books, I had to find out if what this person was saying is actually true. And it turns out it's just wrong. It's just not true. It's sort of like astrology, how they claim that the movement of a certain planet or stars quite far away from us has a specific effect on us that's somehow felt, even though we're well within the gravitational domain of Earth itself. And if we're talking about the gravity of objects and mass, our proximity to the nearest person, even if the nearest person is 2 towns away, for instance, the gravitational effect that the planet Jupiter has on you is microscopic compared to that of the nearest person on Earth to you. It's legitimately not a factor. But if you're in love with the hypothesis that these planets are affecting you, then everything you see is going to confirm that. This is a very good topic to express what I'm trying to say, because there have been thousands of years of research poured into this, and The information is out there and it's available, but it's a persistent, superstitious, extremely biased, and unscientific system of belief. It's not really it's not predictive of anything. It's nearly as good as guessing, but it persists because it's a hypothesis that we love to fall in love with. Why? Because it's just so easy. So I would caution you to beware of the easy solution, especially if it seems to explain too much, and really if you like it too much, because that's how they get you.